could you do this to me, Herman? We're together every day during the week, all day long. I mean, you should bid on something more practical, you know, like having your septic tank cleaned.
Before Seinfeld dominated Monday nights, a little Arkansas sitcom was quietly burning eyebrows, killing off characters from other shows to steal their actors, and somehow convincing a real astronaut to play a fugitive. One future First Lady helped name it, and its star called it the best job of his entire career. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Evening Shade. Fact 1. Hillary Clinton named the show.
Knew nothing really about it. Some friends wanted to go, and I went. And
most people assume that the name Evening Shade came straight from a map, or maybe from a writer's room brainstorm. But the real story is a lot more interesting than that. The name of the show, and even the specific Arkansas town it was set in, reportedly came from a suggestion made by a woman who would later become one of the most recognized political figures in American history, Hillary Clinton. In the late 1980s, producers Harry Thomason and Linda Bloodworth Thomason were among Bill and Hillary Clinton's closest friends in Arkansas. The two couples had known each other for years, and the Thomasons were deeply embedded in Arkansas culture and politics long before they became major names in Hollywood television production. When Harry and Linda were developing the concept for what would become Evening Shade, they were looking for a small, authentic-feeling southern town to anchor the story, and they wanted both the name and the setting to feel genuinely rooted in the real South. According to accounts from the production, it was Hillary Clinton herself who pointed the Thomasons toward Evening Shade, a real but extremely small community tucked away in Sharp County, Arkansas. She reportedly knew the area and felt that the name had the kind of quiet, unhurried charm that the show was going for. The Thomasons agreed, and the name stuck. What makes this particularly strange in hindsight is that Hillary Clinton received no formal credit for this contribution, not a producer title, not a consulting credit, nothing at all. She was simply a friend offering a suggestion over a conversation, and that suggestion ended up shaping the entire identity of a CBS primetime show that ran for 4 seasons and won multiple Emmy Awards. It is one of those small, behind-the-scenes moments that nobody outside the inner circle would have ever known about if it hadn't eventually been shared publicly years later. Fact 2. A character was literally killed for the role.
If it's that big, I guess they're going to have to get you in a crane to put the star on top this year.
That's right.
Television casting is usually a fairly straightforward process. A role opens up, actors audition, and someone gets hired. But the way veteran actor Hal Holbrook ended up joining the cast of Evening Shade was anything but straightforward. In fact, it required another show to permanently eliminate one of its own characters just to make it happen. Hal Holbrook had been appearing on Designing Women, the popular CBS sitcom also produced by Linda Bloodworth Thomason, in a recurring role as Reese Watson, a love interest for one of the main characters. When Linda Bloodworth Thomason needed someone to play Ava Evans, the wise and warm-hearted grandmother figure at the center of Evening Shade, she wanted Holbrook for the role. Except Holbrook was still technically connected to Designing Women, and the two shows would be running at the same time on the same network. The solution that was worked out was genuinely unusual by any standard. Rather than simply writing Holbrook's Designing Women character into the background or quietly phasing him out with a vague excuse, the producers made the decision to kill the character off on screen. Reese Watson died on Designing Women, which formally and permanently freed Holbrook from any obligation to that show and allowed him to commit fully to Evening Shade without any scheduling or contractual conflict. It is worth noting that Designing Women was also a Bloodworth Thomason production, which made the whole arrangement easier to pull off. She was essentially negotiating with herself. But even so, the idea of staging a character's on-screen death specifically to relocate an actor to a different series is remarkably rare in the history of television. Holbrook went on to play the role of Evan Evans throughout the entire run of Evening Shade, and the character became one of the show's most beloved figures. Fact 3. Reynolds was singed by a prop fire extinguisher.
A decision as to whether to put him to sleep or not.
Oh, I'm so sorry, honey.
Are you?
Television sets are generally safe, controlled environments, but every now and then something goes wrong in a way that nobody could have predicted. And what happened on the set of Evening Shade during one particular scene involving a baby bottle falls firmly into that category. It is one of those incidents that sounds almost too strange to be real, but it has been documented and discussed by people who were there when it happened. The scene in question involved a baby bottle that had been left in a microwave or heated in some way, and was supposed to create a comedic moment when it exploded or overheated. During the filming of this scene, actor Michael Jeter, who played the eccentric accountant Herman Stiles and was known for his wildly physical comedic style, discharged a prop fire extinguisher that was being used as part of the bit. Under normal circumstances, that would have been the end of it. A fire extinguisher goes off, everybody laughs, they reset for another take. What nobody anticipated was that the powder or chemical agent released by the extinguisher would somehow interact with the heat from the prop in a way that caused a small flash or flame. Burt Reynolds, who was in close proximity during the scene, ended up with his face directly in the path of whatever came off of that extinguisher, and the result was that his face was burned and his eyebrows were singed completely off. By most accounts, the injury was not severe in a medically serious sense, but it was visible and uncomfortable enough that it affected production temporarily. Reynolds was known for taking a fairly good-natured approach to the physical demands of his work, and the incident was later recalled by those involved with more humor than alarm, though at the time it was genuinely startling for everyone on set. Fact 4. Arkansas was shot entirely in Los Angeles.
This is the last day of the campaign, so this is we got to get in and help bomb, okay?
One of the things that made Evening Shade feel different from a lot of other sitcoms of its era was how grounded it seemed in a specific place. The show had a real Southern texture to it, the pace, the characters, the community feel. All of it was tied to the idea that this was a story set in a small Arkansas town, so it might come as a surprise to learn that almost none of the show was actually filmed anywhere near Arkansas. Evening Shade was shot almost entirely at CBS Studio Center in Studio City, California, which is in the San Fernando Valley area of Los Angeles. This is extremely common for network television production, where studio proximity to crews, equipment, and editing facilities makes on-location shooting impractical for a weekly series. But the gap between what the show felt like and where it was actually made is particularly striking in this case because so much of the show's identity was wrapped up in its Arkansas setting. The real Evening Shade, Arkansas, the actual community in Sharp County that inspired the show, was used for some exterior footage, primarily in the opening credits sequence. Those establishing shots of a small southern town with tree-lined streets and a quiet, unhurried atmosphere gave the show its visual foundation, but they represented only a tiny fraction of what viewers saw each week. The Thomasons, who were genuinely from Arkansas and deeply connected to the state, were careful to make sure the show felt authentic in its dialogue, its characters, and its cultural details. And by most accounts, they succeeded. Many viewers assumed the show was filmed on location, or at least somewhere in the South. But week after week, Burt Reynolds and the rest of the cast were working not in the Arkansas hills, but on a soundstage in Los Angeles. Fact 5. The real Wood Newton is a songwriter.
You know, this betrays you as a man of surprising depth.
What?
I would have had you figured as somebody who'd start off with the sports page.
Character names in television shows are usually invented from scratch, chosen because they sound right for the personality or the setting, or sometimes pulled from combinations of names the writers happen to like. So when the creators of Evening Shade named their central character Woodrow Wood Newton, most people assumed it was simply a good Southern-sounding name that fit the Arkansas setting. But there is actually a real person named Wood Newton, and his connection to Arkansas makes the whole thing more interesting. Wood Newton is a genuine Arkansas-born songwriter who built a career writing country music, and he is best known for co-writing the Oak Ridge Boys song Bobby Sue, which was a major country hit in 1982. He also wrote other recorded songs for artists working in country and Americana, and he had a legitimate profile in the music industry as someone who came out of the South and made his name writing about Southern life. Whether the producers of Evening Shade chose the name Woodrow Newton as a deliberate tribute to the real Wood Newton, or whether the similarity was entirely coincidental, has never been definitively settled in any public record or interview that has surfaced. Linda Bloodworth Thomason, who created the show and was deeply familiar with Arkansas culture, would certainly have been aware of a notable Arkansas songwriter with that name, but she never publicly confirmed a direct connection. What is clear is that the name is not a complete invention. A real Wood Newton existed, was from Arkansas, and had a professional identity tied to the kind of Southern storytelling that Evening Shade celebrated. Whether that influenced the naming choice or not, it gives the character's name an extra layer of real-world resonance that most viewers watching the show would never have known about. Fact 6. Reynolds handpicked the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Is he being sarcastic?
I'm afraid so, yeah.
He doesn't believe Santa Claus is real.
When you watch Evening Shade and see Burt Reynolds playing Woodrow Newton, a former professional football player who has returned to his small hometown to coach the local high school team, the Pittsburgh Steelers connection feels like a natural bit of backstory. It adds some credibility to the character and gives Wood Newton a specific identity beyond just former pro football player. But the reason that particular team ended up being part of the character's history has nothing to do with the story and everything to do with Burt Reynolds' personal sports loyalties. Reynolds was a well-known football fan, and his affection for the Pittsburgh Steelers was genuine and long-standing. He had played college football at Florida State before an injury ended his playing career, and he maintained a deep connection to the sport throughout his life. When it came time to flesh out the backstory of Woodrow Newton, Reynolds reportedly pushed to have the character identified specifically as a former Steeler, not because the writing called for it, not because it served some narrative purpose, but simply because Reynolds wanted that association on screen. It was, by any measure, a low-stakes request, and the producers had no particular reason to object. Naming a fictional ex-player as a former Steeler costs nothing, creates no complications, and satisfied Reynolds' preference without affecting the show's story in any meaningful way. What makes the story slightly amusing is how straightforward it was. Reynolds did not have a complex creative rationale for the choice. He liked the Steelers, his character was a former football player, and so his character became a former Steeler. It is a small example of star power being used not for salary negotiations or billing disputes, but simply for sports fandom. Fact 7. The whole town had only 328 people.
I thought you were behind me.
I am behind you with a mop and a broom.
Part of what made Evening Shade work as a show was the sense that it was set in a genuinely small, tight-knit community, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where local gossip travels fast, and where the arrival of a stranger or the departure of a neighbor is a genuine event worth talking about. The fictional Evening Shade on CBS felt small, but the real Evening Shade, the actual town in Sharp County, Arkansas, that gave the show its name, was even smaller than anything the writers portrayed. When Evening Shade premiered on CBS in September of 1990, the real town of Evening Shade, Arkansas, had a population of approximately 328 people. That is not a rounded figure or an estimate. It is the kind of specific number that comes from census records and local documentation. 328 residents, an actual main street, an actual community with actual people living their lives who suddenly found their town's name attached to a primetime CBS sitcom starring one of the most famous actors in America. What followed was a somewhat surreal experience for the real Evening Shade. The town became a curiosity almost overnight. Journalists wrote about it, Tourists occasionally made the trip to see whether the fictional version matched the real thing, and residents found themselves fielding questions from people who had no idea that the town they had been watching on television actually existed. In a very real sense, the fictional Evening Shade became significantly more famous than the real one, even though the show's version of the town was populated by invented characters and filmed entirely in California. The actual 328 residents of Sharp County, Arkansas, got their town's name on national television, and most of America still had no idea they existed. Fact 8. There are 2 Arkansas towns named Evening Shade.
Well, who's at the door?
I don't know, some old boyfriend of yours, Kyle something or other.
Kyle! You're kidding me!
The confusion surrounding the real Evening Shade, Arkansas becomes even more layered when you account for a geographic detail that most people, including many Arkansas residents, are not aware of. Arkansas does not have just one town called Evening Shade. It has 2 of them. The Evening Shade that is most closely associated with the CBS television show is the one located in Sharp County, in the northeastern part of the state. This is the community that the Thomasons and Hillary Clinton reportedly had in mind when the show was being developed, and it is the one that received the most attention when the show became a hit. Its population of around 328 people in 1990 made it small, even by rural Arkansas standards. But there is a second Evening Shade located in Hempstead County in the southwestern part of the state. This Evening Shade is even less well known than the first one, and it has its own separate history and community identity entirely distinct from the Sharp County version. The 2 towns share a name but have no particular connection to each other beyond that. This created a recurring source of confusion throughout the show's run. Journalists writing about the real town behind the show occasionally referenced the wrong county. Fans who tried to visit the real Evening Shade sometimes had to verify which one they were heading to. Travel features and local interest stories about the show's Arkansas connection were not always careful to specify which Evening Shade they were discussing. It is the kind of quirky geographic footnote that most people would never think to look up, and it adds one more layer of oddity to a show that already had a stranger backstory than most people realize. Fact 9. The opening credits used real baby photos of the stars.
Does that mean you're gonna fire Herman?
I want to fire Herman.
Oh, don't you think you're being a little hasty?
The opening credit sequence of Evening Shade was designed to give the show a warm, nostalgic feel, the kind of small-town, front porch atmosphere that matched the storytelling style of the series. As part of that sequence, the show presented images of the principal cast at various stages of life, creating a visual sense of characters who had grown up together in a community and shared a long history. What made this sequence unusual was that those images were not staged or recreated. They were actual childhood photographs of the real actors. For viewers who paid close attention, this was a genuinely interesting detail. The faces in those early photographs were not hired child actors or stock images chosen to vaguely resemble the cast. They were the actual Burt Reynolds, the actual Marilu Henner, the actual Michael Jeter, and their fellow cast members, photographed years or decades earlier in their real lives before any of them had become television personalities. Getting those photographs together would have required reaching out to the cast members and their families to collect personal images, baby pictures, childhood snapshots, the kinds of photos people keep in albums and shoeboxes rather than on their professional resumes. It was an unusual production request, and it gave the opening sequence an authenticity that a purely staged version could not have replicated. The sequence was not widely discussed in the press at the time, and many casual viewers likely never gave it much thought beyond recognizing it as a charming way to open the show. But for anyone who knew what they were looking at, it was a small reminder that behind every television cast are real people with real histories, and the opening of Evening Shade made that visible in a way that was quietly distinctive. Fact 10. The football scenes were a secret college tribute.
We went to the Holiday Inn to get some work done. I couldn't stay at work. The phones were ringing.
That was me calling.
One of the recurring elements of Evening Shade was the high school football program that Woodrow Newton coaches, a team that serves as the comedic and dramatic center of much of the show's storytelling. The team's name, their games, and the culture around them were all part of what made the fictional town feel lived in and specific. But the football sequences in the show were not just a production detail. They were also, for the producer Harry Thomason, a quiet personal tribute to his own college experience. Game footage for the series was filmed at Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia, Arkansas, which is located in the southern part of the state. This was one of the times when actual Arkansas locations were used for the show, making the football scenes among the more geographically authentic parts of the production. Southern Arkansas University is a real school with its own athletic identity, and filming there gave the football sequences a texture that a generic Los Angeles location could not have provided. The team in the show was named the Mules, and that name was not random. Southern Arkansas University's athletic teams are actually called the Mule Riders, and Harry Thomason, who attended the school, deliberately chose the Mules name as a personal nod to his alma mater. It was the kind of inside detail that would fly completely over the head of any viewer who did not already know the connection, which was essentially everyone watching the show outside of a small circle of people familiar with Southern Arkansas University athletics. It is a small detail, but it is the kind of thing that production insiders sometimes do, embedding a private tribute into a public product in a way that most audiences will never notice. Fact 11. A spin-off starred a pre-fame Leah Remini.
About 10 years later, she went to the hospital, just to have a checkup. They grew back. Isn't that amazing?
Evening Shade was successful enough during its run that CBS was open to the idea of spinning off some of its supporting characters into their own series. The attempt that came closest to becoming a real show was a project called Harlan and Merlene, built around two recurring Evening Shade characters. What makes the history of that failed pilot particularly interesting in hindsight is who was cast in it and who was involved in making it. Burt Reynolds took a hands-on role in the Harlan and Merlene project, reportedly co-writing the script and directing the pilot himself. The story centered on a couple from Evening Shade who were dealing with a pregnancy and the particular complications that come with a southern small-town upbringing colliding with more modern circumstances. It was designed to have the same warm, character-driven tone as Evening Shade itself. The cast for the pilot included a young actress named Leah Remini, who at that point in her career was largely unknown to mainstream television audiences. She was in her early 20s, and while she had some credits to her name, she had not yet had a breakout role. Remini was cast in the Harlan and Merlene pilot as a pregnant New York transplant whose presence in the story added a fish-out-of-water dynamic to the small-town setting. The pilot was produced and submitted, but CBS did not pick it up as a series. It never aired as its own show, and most television history coverage of the Evening Shade era does not spend much time on it. Leah Remini, of course, went on to become widely known as Carrie Heffernan on The King of Queens, which premiered in 1998. Her appearance in the Harlan and Merlene pilot remains one of the less discussed chapters in her early career. Fact 12. Willie Nelson and Buzz Aldrin played escaped convicts.
Online right now, but they say it's a part that's probably going to expand.
Oh, what's the line?
Well, I don't want to spoil it for when you see it on TV.
Television series finales often try to do something memorable, a wedding, a death, a major revelation. The team behind Evening Shade chose to close out the show's run with a finale that featured two guest stars who had absolutely no obvious connection to a small-town Arkansas sitcom, playing a pair of fugitives on the run from the law. Willie Nelson, the legendary country music artist and one of the most recognizable figures in American popular music, appeared in the finale as an escaped convict. Alongside him was Buzz Aldrin, not an actor, not a comedian, but an actual former NASA astronaut who walked on the moon during the Apollo 11 mission in 1969. also playing a convict on the run. The pairing is genuinely difficult to explain in conventional terms. Nelson had a laid-back, outlaw-friendly public persona that made him at least a plausible choice for a light-hearted criminal role. Aldrin, on the other hand, was a decorated military officer and space pioneer whose presence in a sitcom finale as a fugitive is the kind of casting decision that raises questions nobody has fully answered in any interview or behind-the-scenes account. The finale was reportedly designed to go out with a sense of fun rather than sentiment, and the climax of the episode was staged as a deliberate echo of the final scene of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, the iconic 1969 film in which the two lead characters rush out to face an impossible number of opponents. Evening Shade replicated the structure of that moment in its own comedic way, using it as a finale punctuation mark. It was an unusual ending for an unusual show, and it is the kind of series finale that rewards anyone who goes back to watch it with fresh eyes. Fact 13. The show was canceled while still a top 30 hit.
In that case, Christmas time, I'm going to tell you about how I ran the wrong way for a touchdown in the Texas-Arkansas game.
Most television shows get canceled because they are not performing well enough. Ratings fall, the audience drifts away, and the network decides to move on. Evening Shade did not follow that pattern. When CBS announced that the show would not be returning for a fifth season, it was still drawing a large enough audience to rank comfortably within the top 30 programs on American network television. By the standards of the time, and honestly by any standard, that is a show that still has life in it. The official reason given by CBS for the cancellation was cost. The show had become expensive to produce, and the salaries of the cast had climbed significantly over 4 seasons as the show's success gave the actors more leverage in their contracts. Marilu Henner, who played Ava Newton on the show, later spoke publicly about this, confirming that rising cast costs were the primary driver behind the network's decision to end the series rather than any dissatisfaction with how it was performing in the ratings. This put Evening Shade in a relatively small category of canceled shows. Successful enough that the audience was still there, but no longer financially practical enough for the network to justify keeping it on the air. The economics of network television have always involved this kind of calculation, where a show's profitability matters as much as its viewership numbers. But it is still jarring from a viewer's perspective to see a program disappear when it is still clearly connecting with audiences. For fans of the show, the cancellation felt abrupt. The series had not overstayed its welcome or run out of ideas in any obvious way, which made the ending feel more like a business decision than a creative conclusion. Because by most accounts, that is exactly what it was. Fact 14. Reynolds' divorce may have ended the show.
Played big, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. My wife doesn't understand. She thinks I'm immature.
Beyond the official explanation of rising production costs, there has long been a secondary theory about why Evening Shade came to an end when it did. One that centers not on spreadsheets or network strategy, but on the turbulent personal life of its lead actor during the show's final season. Burt Reynolds and actress Lonnie Anderson had been married since 1988, and their relationship had been a tabloid fixture throughout their time together. By 1993, the marriage had collapsed publicly and acrimoniously, with both parties making statements to the press and the divorce proceedings, drawing significant media attention. The split was not quiet or private. It played out very visibly in newspapers and entertainment coverage at a time when Reynolds was still the most recognizable face on Evening Shade. People who worked on the show during that period have spoken about how the personal turmoil affected Reynolds' presence on set. By multiple accounts, his mood and energy during production shifted noticeably as the divorce became more contentious. For an actor who had always brought a particular warmth and ease to Woodrow Newton, the emotional weight of what he was going through off-camera was difficult to completely separate from what was happening in front of it. Whether CBS factored Reynolds' personal situation into its decision-making has never been formally confirmed. The network's stated reason remained cost. But cast and crew members who were there during that final season have been candid about the fact that the atmosphere on set was different, that something had changed, and that the combination of financial pressure and the lead actor's personal difficulties created conditions that made continuing the show feel less viable than it might have been otherwise. It is, ultimately, a story about how real life has a way of finding its way onto the set, no matter how professional everyone tries to be. Fact 15. Reynolds called it the best job of his life.
There's two things a teenage boy cannot resist. One is an out-of-town party, and the other is an older woman. Is this beautiful or what?
Burt Reynolds had one of the most remarkable careers in American entertainment. He was a major box office star through the 1970s and into the 80s, appearing in films like Smokey and the Bandit, The Cannonball Run, and Boogie Nights, the latter of which earned him an Academy Award nomination. He was a tabloid celebrity, a talk show fixture, and for a period in the late 1970s, one of the most famous people on the planet. He had options, he had opportunities, and he had decades of film work to reflect on. So it carries real weight when you consider that Reynolds, in multiple interviews over the years, pointed to Evening Shade, a CBS sitcom set in a tiny fictional Arkansas town, as the most enjoyable professional experience of his life. Reynolds spoke about the show with a particular kind of affection that went beyond polite promotion. He talked about the cast as a family, about the writing as something that genuinely made him laugh, and about the character of Woodrow Newton as someone he felt connected to in a way that not all of his film roles had provided. The ensemble nature of the show, working with Marilu Henner, Hal Holbrook, Michael Jeter, and the rest of the cast week after week, seemed to give him a sense of creative community that solo film work could not replicate. Michael Jeter won an Emmy Award for his role on the show, and the series itself received significant critical recognition, but the awards were secondary to what Reynolds described as the simple pleasure of showing up to work every day with people he genuinely liked, doing material he found funny, and playing a character who felt real to him. For a man who could have pointed to blockbusters and Hollywood legends as the highlight of his career, choosing a 4-season sitcom as the job he loved most says something about what actually makes work satisfying. And Evening Shade, by Reynolds' own account, had it in abundance.